Well, welcome to the roof of Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. These are the Pregame Keys on the podcast. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward, and this is where I live now.
I don't know what to say. We're not going to be able to show you, folks, so Austin's going to be up here for the game. There's a railing right here. This is a makeshift table you can see behind us where the media that's forced in the overflow zone will sit. But you can't sit because you can't see the field if you're sitting. So this will be an interesting day of coverage, I suppose. It just makes me think about how the Big Ten needs to do a better job of, making sure that teams that they welcome into the league are actually prepared for the media that covers this league. But no one likes to hear about us complain. So let's talk about the pregame keys.
The point is, I'd like to be able to see the game to talk about it, because that would be better for snap judgments.
You can barely see the replay screen.
I'll see half of the replays. I'm going to do my best to find a way to watch Ohio State and Oregon, because I'm pretty excited for it. And we're going to make do with whatever situation they have thrown at us, because this is going to be a hell of a game.
It should be one of the best games of the year. It's one of the most anticipated games all offseason. You have two teams that are, for the most part, extremely healthy, minus what we think Jordan Birch, the defensive end for Oregon, injured in practice on Thursday, as was rumored. Seems like there's some uncertainty about his availability. Again, as we said on Friday night, doing road breaks, I'm not sure that really matters. Ultimately, this Oregon team is deep. They're talented. They've got a lot of depth on the defensive line, especially. So for Ohio State, though, it's about getting everyone back, and that's the key. Like, no scholarship player is on the availability report for Ohio State. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to play, as we've seen the Buckeyes in the past, sort of play around with that availability report a little. But
a little?
Well, I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yeah, okay.
But the expectation is that all of the key players for Ohio State, the Carnell Tates, the Donovan Jacksons, the Cody Simons, all the guys that have had little things here or there are good to go, and the Buckeyes are going to be full strength against Oregon at 7:30 on NBC, number 2 team in the country versus number 3 team in the country. And I mean, it's going to be a banger. Let's just call it, it's going to be a good environment. There's a ton of Buckeye fans out here in Eugene as you watch them as we're walking into the stadium. Oregon fans, I think, are a little shell-shocked, like, holy crap, what did we do? But we'll see how many get into the stadium. That's the difference, I guess, for Ohio State.
Yeah, we did check. We had a number of people that reached out on subtext about Quinshon Judkins and potential issue with his hand, and we were told he's fine. He's not listed as even questionable for this game, so certainly we'll monitor that as best as we can when the Buckeyes arrive on the team bus, when they go out through warm-ups and all that. But there was no suggestion to us, from what we could find out, that Quinshon Judkins would be not playing in this game or limited. We'll see if it affects him at all. Even if it does, Ohio State still has Travion Henderson. So you talked about Jordan Birch and the depth that Oregon would lean on. The Buckeyes can do the same thing in the backfield. James Peoples is also refreshed, ready to go, and could help in this game if need be. But Quinshon Judkins expected to play, and that's the bottom line there. So
Ohio State fans doing the Zapruder film stuff, looking at the team arrival on Friday night at the hotel in Eugene. Nothing on his hands to suggest an injury. No braces, no casts, nothing else. So they seemed to both be moving okay.
Doing one of those?
So yeah, he was doing one of these.
He's doing the chicken dance.
He was doing one of these when he was walking in. It was weird, but no. It's football. It's week 6 of the season. Like, there's going to be guys getting banged up, and you just have to fight through it. So if Quinshon is good to go and he can play, he's going to play, and that's why he's not on the availability report at all. So let's go.
Yeah, clean bill of health there for Ohio State, ready for this one. Then I guess I'll just dip right into the old cliche bucket for the pregame keys. If Ohio State doesn't turn the football over here, it's hard for me to imagine a path for Oregon to win without generating takeaways, without an interception from Will Howard or a careless fumble or whatever else. If Ohio State protects the football, they are the more talented team, 1 through 85. So I think maybe last week can serve as a helpful reminder to Ohio State about what can happen in the situation that you might get into if you do give the football away, because Iowa was not stopping Ohio State from going up and down the field. It was a fumble and it was an interception, and that turned it into a closer game than the Buckeyes would have wanted. And Oregon is much more capable offensively of making the Buckeyes pay than Iowa was. So you cannot give them extra shots at it.
Well, this Oregon offense is predicated on hitting home runs. They are not a drive the ball down the field type of team. They run the ball really well with Jordan James, but they are not built to have long, sustained drives. And so Ohio State, for the Buckeyes, I think the key is the defense making sure that they're getting off the field on third down. So if you can stop Oregon early and force Dylan Gabriel to speed up and make some poor decisions. He's willing to turn the ball over, as you've seen watching him throughout this season. So for me, that's the other key. Is like the first key for me, since you're taking the turnovers, is hitting Dylan Gabriel early, get off the field. Don't allow Oregon's offense to start grinding out long drives, because that's not what they want to do, but also in a place like this, an environment like this, you know that they're going to take some shots, and so you just got to make sure they can't hit them. So it's going to be interesting to watch the Buckeyes back half. This is definitely the best receiver group that they face this year. You have very, very like speedy wide receivers like Evan Stewart, guys who can really stretch the field. Gabriel has not shown a real competency throwing the ball down the field, but they take a lot of shots, and so it's going to be incumbent on the Buckeye defensive backs to make sure that they're in position and getting those HOBs and not the penalties, because that's what Oregon's going to be counting on today.
Yeah, I think it'll be pretty interesting to see if Jim Knowles adjusts some of that coverage. He talked a couple weeks ago about wanting to maybe play more press, play more man, get Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke in position to challenge guys. We know that they're capable of that. You know, you ask them to play off, they will. They're going to do whatever Jim Knowles wants to do, and he was trying to eliminate the explosive plays and keep everything in front of those guys. But if this is a matchup game, if it is a talent-equated game, you need your playmakers to go out there and win contested one-on-one matchups. And I don't have any concern that Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun could not win those matchups. Jordan Hancock, playing in the nickel, whatever. All those guys can win in those situations, and this is a game where you have to.
Yeah, and that's leads into my second thing. We talk about winning. It's got to be winning up front for Ohio State on the front four. This has to be JT Tuimoloau's best game of the season. Jack Sawyer's played pretty consistent, I think, most of the year. He hasn't always showed up in the stat line, but JT's been a little hit and miss. And so in a game like this with Oregon, they do a ton of stuff behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of passings behind the line of scrimmage. That's where JT traditionally has fared pretty well. Like, this kind of plays into what you do best. So this is a game for JT to step up, and he's going to face some good offensive tackles, but he faces good offensive tackles every day in practice. So it's time to make a couple plays and put yourself back on the map, because right now, Oregon, I think, is going to look for ways to exploit the Ohio State aggressiveness up front. And JT and Jack, because of the lack of stats and the lack of sacks and that sort of stuff, have shown a tendency to perhaps go a little too far upfield, maybe when it doesn't need to happen. And if that happens early, I think you could see Oregon take advantage of it. So it's a big moment for Jack and JT.
I wonder if this team needs to take a deep shot early, first drive, first quarter. It took into the third quarter before Ohio State's like, oh, Jeremiah Smith can go deep, and Will Howard has enough arm to get it 50 yards down the field. We've talked about that. Is it an absolute necessity for Ohio State to build an offense around deep shots? It definitely is not, with the way that they run the football, with the efficiency that they have in the RPO game. But maybe something like that, at least trying it early on to maybe back Oregon up in the secondary a little bit, or take the crowd out of it early with a big score and a big strike early on. I feel like there might be some value to that normally I wouldn't say, hey, you have to go do that. And Ohio State could win this game without doing that. But I wonder if there could be multiple benefits to trying to stretch the field early.
Yeah, it's just, plus it gives you an opportunity to build Will Howard's confidence early. A couple of his best games in his career, game against Texas a year ago, the Big 12 championship game 3 years ago, those are the biggest games he's played, and those where he showed up the brightest. And so I think if you give Will the confidence to say, we believe in you, we know you can make these throws, and plus, as you said, the added benefit is getting Oregon to have to play back a little bit, because the Buckeyes' run game has to be the catalyst for the offense in this game. I think Will Howard is good. As I've said all week, I think Oregon will force Will Howard to try to beat them. But from an Ohio State perspective, the way you counter that is by making sure that you open things up in the run game and let the run game help balance things out. So it's a huge part of the game, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much more to add. We've been talking about this one for 9 months, 10 months.
Yeah. It's finally clean. You can't have stupid penalties. Yeah. I mean, this is the first time Ohio State is going to be in a road environment that's going to be really, really loud. We've seen a pretty good year so far from the offensive line as far as not having procedure penalties and false starts and that kind of stuff. You can't have that tonight. So whatever the Buckeyes have done all week to work on a silent count and that sort of mechanical stuff, we'll see if it pays off, because you can't let the crowd get into this game. So
I wonder what makes it loud, because this is not a big stadium.
No,
and it's not even built up to hold in the noise. It's interesting. I guess we're going to find out.
We're going to find out, because it certainly has a reputation for it.
Yep.
So whether it's just right on top of you, again, it's hard to tell because we're up here on the roof, but it's a beautiful view. If we were here to watch a sunrise or a sunset, it'd be pretty awesome. But
I'm here to watch a football game.
Yeah, so I'll be on the field. I'll probably have a better view than he will for the first time ever, but we're looking forward to it. We got about 2.5 hours until this game kicks off as we wrap up this episode of the Pregame Keys on the podcast. Final thought, anything?
You hit the point. If Ohio State doesn't turn the football over, I don't see a path for an Oregon victory. And maybe I'll be wrong, and we'll talk about it one way or the other on Snap Judgments in a few hours. Hope everybody enjoys the game. It's been a long time coming. It's number 2 Ohio State at number 3 Oregon. It's on NBC, and it's also streaming on Peacock if you need to get it that way. He's Berm. I'm Austin. This has been the Pregame Keys on the podcast. We'll see you after the game.